She woke up tied on cold dirt, lips split, wrists burning. The air smelled like hay, sweat, and fear. Sadie Rowe didn't scream. Screaming failed her once, and the barn learned her silence first. What the rancher did to her in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine. And the worst part was this: whoever did it slept fine, then walked away like the mess would clean itself. Not because of blood on the floor, but because someone decided she could be erased quietly. She lay on her side where light slipped through broken boards, dust floating like it was watching. Her ankles were bound, her hands were numb, her mouth tasted like iron and old water. Every breath felt borrowed. The barn was not loud. It did not echo with violence. It was worse than that. It was calm, patient, and waiting. Sadie tried to remember how long she'd been there. Hours, maybe. Days, maybe. Time broke apart when fear stayed too long. Her last clear memory was boots on wood, not rushed, not angry, just certain. Someone had decided what she was worth, and then left her there like a chore already finished, outside. The desert did what it always did. It watched and said nothing. Miles away from town, a man named Hank Mercer rode in under a sky that looked baked dry and unforgiving. He had bought the land for almost nothing. 30 acres of quiet, a house that leaned like it had given up, a barn that stood crooked but still standing. Hank did not come for hope. He came for silence. The war had taught him how loud silence could be, but he thought he could handle it. He had buried his wife with money from the last cattle he owned. No crowd, no speeches, just dirt and a box and the sound of his own breathing. When he stepped off his horse, the wind cut across the yard like a warning. His boots crunched on gravel. The horse snorted, uneasy, shifting weight. That was when Hank felt it. Something was wrong. Animals know before men do. He walked toward the barn with his hand near his knife, not from fear, but habit. The doors groaned open like something exhaling. Inside, shadows stretched long. Dust floated slow. The smell hit him first. Sweat, old rope, fear that had nowhere to go. Then he saw the bundle in the far corner. Not neat, not hidden, just placed there like trash. At first he thought it was rags, and then he saw a foot, bare, still. Hank did not rush. Every step felt louder than it should have been. The barn listened. He knelt and touched her shoulder. Her skin felt cold, like she'd been left out all night. Then she twitched, just barely, like life was hanging on by a thread. Hank's knife flashed once in the dim light. He cut the rope fast, 'cause he knew what rope does to skin. He pulled back the blanket. Her wrists were raw, like fresh hide rubbed too long. Sadie Rowe lay there, bruised, sunburned, dirt smeared across her face, lips cracked and bleeding. Her eyes fluttered open for half a second. Green? Glass-like. Terrified. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Hank poured water from his canteen onto a cloth and pressed it to her forehead. Her breath stuttered. "You're safe," he said. He did not know if that was true yet. She passed out. Hank sat there for a long time, listening to her breathing, slow and uneven, like it might stop if he looked away. The barn was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. The kind that demanded an answer. He carried her outside and laid her on a cot beneath the open sky. He wrapped her in the only clean blanket he owned. He sat beside her with a shotgun across his knees, not because he was afraid, because he understood something simple. Whoever did this did not finish. That night, Sadie dreamed of boots again. She flinched in her sleep. Hank did not touch her. He just kept the light on. Morning came slow. Sadie woke to the smell of bitter coffee and the sound of wind moving through dry grass. Her body screamed when she tried to sit up. Hank handed her the cup with both hands. She took it the same way. They did not speak. They did not need to. Her eyes told the story her mouth could not. The hollow look of someone who had seen how easily a human life could be put aside. She finally whispered her name. Sadie. Hank nodded once. She didn't say who did it. Not yet. That afternoon. Hank found tracks by the creek. Sadie didn't say it out loud, but she didn't look at the barn anymore. even in daylight. She listened for boards creaking, like the sound itself could drag her back. 2 sets of boot, fresh. Cigarette butts that were not his. He checked the rifle, loaded extra shells, set a bell on the gate. Sadie watched from the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Learning something important. She had not been left there by accident. That barn was chosen. What the rancher did to her in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine, because it was meant to end quietly. As the sun dropped behind the ridge, Hank stood looking out over the land he thought would save him. Sadie sat behind him, eyes fixed on the barn doors that no longer felt empty. Somewhere out there, the man who did this believed it was over. He believed no one would ask questions. He believed Sadie Rowe would disappear into dirt and silence. Hank Mercer knew better. And as the desert cooled and the bell on the gate sat waiting, one question hung heavier than the night air. When the man who left her there comes back to make sure she stays silent, who breaks first out here, him or them? Morning showed up on the ranch like it had second thoughts. Sadie Rowe woke up to the sound of wind brushing dry grass and the low creak of wood settling. Her body felt like it had been borrowed by someone else. Every movement reminded her she was still alive, and not fully sure why. She tried to sit up, and the pain answered before Hank Mercer could. He was already there, sitting on a crate near the porch, coffee steaming in a chipped tin cup. "Don't push it," he said. Not gentle, not cold, just honest. Sadie nodded. Talking felt like too much work. She wrapped both hands around the coffee when he passed it to her. It was strong, bitter, and tasted like something meant to keep a person upright. Her shoulders dropped a little. She was still weak, but warm coffee and clean air can bring a person back when they've been left for dead. That was the first thing Hank noticed. Not the bruises, not the way she avoided looking at the barn, but that tiny drop in her shoulders, like her body finally believed it had a place to sit. They did not talk much that morning, and that was fine. There is a kind of silence that only broken people understand. It does not ask questions. It does not rush answers. Sadie watched Hank move around the yard, fixing a loose board, checking the fence, feeding the horse. He did not hover. He did not stare. He treated her like a person, not a problem. By noon, she asked if she could stand. Hank looked at her once, then nodded. She took 3 careful steps, then 4. Her legs shook, but they held. "That's enough," he said, and she listened. That afternoon, Hank walked the property again. Slow this time, careful. The tracks by the creek still bothered him. 2 sets of boots, heavy, recent. He knelt and pressed his fingers into the dirt. Someone had lingered, someone who wasn't in a hurry. That kind of confidence did not come from stealing water or passing through. It came from a man who thought he still owned something. When Hank returned, Sadie was sitting on the porch, staring at the open land like she was trying to memorize it. "You remember anything?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "His name was Cal Turner," she said. Her voice cracked on the name, but she didn't stop. "We were married once, long time ago. He left. Took the land, took everything that mattered." She swallowed. "He came back with 2 men. Said the deed was still his. He kept talking about an old land grant, like a piece of paper made him king. He said the law was on his side, and I was just another thing on the list. And he said I was part of it." Hank felt his jaw tighten. "They tied me up in that barn," she said, "like I was something to come back for." She looked at him then, eyes steady but tired. "I didn't think anyone would find me." Hank nodded once, not in pity, in understanding. That night, he set the second shotgun by the door. He sharpened the knife he hadn't used since the war. He set the bell at the gate a little tighter. Sadie watched him do it all. She didn't ask why. Fear had taught her how to read preparation. The next few days settled into a strange rhythm. Sadie walked a little farther each morning, helped feed the horse, carried light buckets from the well. Hank let her. He did not tell her to rest all the time. He knew better. By the 5th day, Sadie stood on her own without shaking. By the 6th, she laughed once, short and dry, when Hank burned the beans. "Guess we're even," she said. He smiled, just a little. That evening, Hank found cigarette butts near the fence line, fresh. He didn't show them to Sadie, but she saw the way his eyes moved toward the hills. "He's close, isn't he?" she asked. "I think he never left," Hank said. Sadie nodded slowly. The next morning, she surprised him. "Can you teach me to shoot?" Hank looked at her for a long moment. He saw fear there, but he also saw something else. Resolve. He didn't answer. He walked to the shed, came back with a worn rifle and a box of shells. He set up cans along the fence. "Start slow," he said. Her first shot missed wide, the second two. She laughed under her breath. By the seventh shot, the can jumped clean off the rail. Hank nodded. "That'll do." Sadie didn't smile, but her eyes were different now, that night. They sat by the fire. Beans boiled too long. Stars stretched wide overhead. Sadie spoke again, more than before, about how the town looked away, about how Cal always knew who would stay silent. "If he comes back," she said, "I won't be tied up again." Hank did not respond right away. He stirred the fire. "Good," he said finally. The next morning, the bell at the gate rang once. Soft. Hank didn't move. Neither did Sadie. They looked at each other, both knowing this moment had been walking toward them since the barn door opened. Out beyond the fence, dust rose slow, too slow for travelers. Hank picked up the rifle. Sadie stood beside him. And as the sound of approaching hooves crept closer, one thought pressed hard against Hank's chest. When Cal Turner steps onto this land again, is Sadie ready to face the man who thought the barn was the end of her story? The bell at the gate rang again just before sunset. Not loud, not rushed. Just enough to let Hank Mercer know someone wanted him awake. He stood on the porch with the rifle resting against his leg, looking out toward the dust rolling in slow. Sadie Rowe stood a step behind him, wrapped in a jacket that was still too big, hands steady at her sides. Neither of them spoke. 3 riders came into view. 2 stayed back. One rode ahead like he owned the place. Sadie didn't have to say the name. Hank already knew it. Cal Turner rode like a man who had never been told no and never learned how to hear it. He was heavier than Sadie remembered, older too, but that smile was the same. That smile that said the world was something to be taken, not shared. Hank stepped off the porch and planted his boots in the dirt. Not aggressive, not polite. Just there. "Didn't think anyone was home," Cal called out. Hank didn't answer right away. He took his time. "You're standing on my land," Hank said. Cal laughed, a short laugh like he was humoring a child. "Funny thing about land," Cal said. "Paper decides who owns it." Sadie felt her chest tighten. She remembered those words. He always talked like the world was a receipt he kept folded in his pocket. Hank nodded once. "Funny thing about paper," he said. "It burns." The 2 men behind Cal shifted in their saddles. One spat. The other looked toward the barn without meaning to. Sadie noticed. That was when she realized something important. They knew what had been done in there. Cal's eyes slid past Hank and landed on Sadie. The smile thinned. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "You're tougher than you look." Sadie stepped forward before Hank could stop her. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "You left me there," she said. "You didn't even check." Cal shrugged. "Didn't need to." Hank felt something settle in his chest, not anger. Certainty. This man was never going to pretend. Hank didn't raise his voice. Men like Cal don't deserve a speech. One of Cal's men reached for his gun. Not fast, just careless. Hank fired first. The sound cracked across the land like dry wood splitting. The man fell hard and stayed down. Sadie raised the rifle Hank had given her. Her hands didn't shake, but her stomach did. She fired. The man didn't drop clean. He yelped and went down hard, grabbing his leg, trying to crawl for cover. Cal dove off his horse and rolled toward the corral, firing wild shots that hit nothing but fence posts and dirt. One round chewed the porch rail. Wood splintered and popped like dry bone. Dust jumped off the ground around Hank's boots. Hank moved steady, not chasing, not rushing. Sadie circled wide. The way Hank had shown her, she felt the fear. But it didn't drive. Cal tried to run. He always had. Sadie tackled him near the barn door, the same door. They hit the ground hard. He grabbed at her jacket, her hair, anything. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "It already has," she said. Hank was there in seconds. He pulled Cal up by the collar and held him still. Cal's eyes flicked to the barn. For the first time, he looked unsure. "You left her there to disappear," Hank said. "That was your mistake." Cal started talking then, begging, promising, blaming everyone but himself. Hank didn't hit him, didn't curse. He just listened. That night, they didn't kill Cal Turner. They did something worse. They stripped away the lie by morning. Cal was tied to a mule with a sign around his neck that told the truth plain. No drama, no poetry. The sign said, "I left a woman to die in the barn." The town saw him ride through, slow enough for every porch and every window to notice. No one laughed. No one looked away. Justice in that part of the world didn't always wear a badge. When it was done, the ranch went quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the kind that crawled under your skin. Sadie sat on the porch later with a cup of tea Hank had burned, and she smiled anyway. "Guess we're even now," she said. Hank chuckled. "Not even close." Days passed. Fences got mended. The barn doors stayed open. Sadie still had bad nights. Hank still woke up early. Healing didn't show up all at once. One evening, Sadie asked him a question that caught him off guard. "You think a place remembers what happened to it?" Hank thought about the barn, about the war, about all the things he had tried to forget. "I think people do," he said, "and that's usually enough." Later that week, Hank found a note nailed to the gate. Old paper, red paint. "I'm coming back for what's mine." Sadie read it without blinking. "That's not Cal's handwriting," she said. Hank folded the note and slid it into his coat pocket. "It's from someone older," he said. The wind picked up. The land went still again, and that was when Hank realized the ranch wasn't done being tested. Before we go any further, if you're still here listening, take a moment and settle in. Maybe grab a cup of tea or coffee, so let the story breathe a little. If these kinds of stories mean something to you, go ahead and subscribe. No rush. Just stick around if you want to hear how this ends, and tell me something. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you listening from? Because the next part of this story isn't about Cal Turner anymore. It's about a past Hank Mercer thought he buried, and the man who just knocked on the gate to dig it back up. The note stayed in Hank Mercer's coat pocket for 2 days, not because he forgot it, because he didn't want to say it out loud and make it real. Sadie Rowe noticed anyway. She noticed everything now. The way Hank checked the gate twice, the way he listened to the hills before he listened to her, the way his coffee went cold because he kept staring past the fence line. On the third morning, the letter came, not carried by a rider, not handed over with a warning, just sitting there, stuck in the fence post like it belonged. Plain envelope, no return name, no town mark, no kindness. Hank held it for a long time before opening it. Sadie was inside making biscuits, and the smell was almost enough to fool him into feeling normal. Almost. He opened it with 2 fingers and read 4 words. "I remember Tombstone, R." Hank's mouth went dry. Not from fear, from memory. He folded the letter slow and slid it into his pocket, right beside the other note. Then he stood there in the yard like a man trying to hear something that wasn't wind. Sadie stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. "You get mail out here?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Hank didn't look up. "Not the kind you want," he said. She came down a step, eyes narrowing just a little. "Who's R?" Hank finally looked at her. He could have lied. He didn't. "Old mistake," he said. Sadie held his gaze. She didn't push, but she didn't let it go either. That was the thing about her now. She wasn't loud, she was steady. That afternoon, Hank worked harder than he needed to. Fixed boards that didn't matter, moved tools that were already put away. Anything to keep his hands busy. Sadie watched him for a while, then went back inside. She didn't follow him around asking questions. She knew how it felt when your own thoughts wouldn't leave you alone. When night came, Hank didn't light the porch lamp. He didn't like being seen. Sadie noticed that too. She brought 2 cups of tea outside anyway and set one near his knee. "You don't have to tell me," she said. "But don't shut me out either." Hank stared into the dark. The land looked peaceful, but he knew peace was not a promise, and it was something you borrowed now, and somebody always came to collect. "I used to run with men I shouldn't have," he said. His voice was quiet, like he didn't want the ranch hearing it. Sadie stayed still. No gasp, no judgment, just listening. "It was before the war," Hank continued. "Before I had anything worth losing." He swallowed. "Tombstone," he said. "That place gets into your bones. Mention it once, and you taste dust for a week." Sadie nodded, like she understood even if she didn't. "There was a man," Hank said. "Rourke." He didn't say the whole name. He didn't need to. "He led a crew. I rode with them for a while," Hank said. "We weren't saints. We weren't heroes. We were just men who thought the world owed us something." Sadie's fingers tightened around her cup. "Did you hurt someone?" she asked. Hank didn't answer right away. Then he spoke like a man stepping onto thin ice. "I didn't pull the trigger that day," Patty said. "But I didn't stop it either." Sadie exhaled slow. The wind moved through the grass. Somewhere out in the dark, a coyote yipped, then went quiet again. "Rourke found you," Sadie said. Hank nodded. "And if he found me, he found what matters to me." Sadie looked toward the barn without meaning to, then back at Hank. "So he's not here for the land," she said. Hank shook his head once. "He's here for the story," he said. "And men like him, they like endings." Sadie set her tea down. "Then we don't give him one," she said. Hank almost smiled at that. Almost. The next morning, Hank saddled up before the sun fully cleared the ridge. Sadie stepped onto the porch, hair pulled back, blanket around her shoulders. "Where you going?" she asked. "Checking the east fence," Hank said. Sadie gave him a look that said she didn't mention it because she was polite, not because she believed him. "Don't be stupid," she said. Hank paused with his boot in the stirrup. "That's the nicest thing you've said to me all week," he replied. Sadie huffed a small laugh, then got serious again. "Come back," she said. Hank nodded once and rode out. He didn't head to the east fence. He headed to the ridge trail, the place where the wind always changed first. Halfway down the trail, he saw a small fire. Not a wildfire, not a camp someone built by accident. A controlled little flame, like a man who wanted to be found but not surrounded. Hank dismounted and walked in slow. His rifle stayed low. His heart did not. Then he heard a voice from the dark, calm as a man asking for sugar. "You still wear the same boots, Mercer." Hank stopped. He didn't look around fast. He didn't show surprise. Rourke stepped into the firelight like he'd been invited. Older, rougher. But that grin was the same kind of grin Cal Turner used to wear, like pain was funny if it happened to somebody else. "You got guts showing up alone," Rourke said. "Or you got tired of living." Hank kept his eyes on him. "I'm tired of you," he said. Rourke chuckled and leaned closer to the fire. "I ain't here to shoot you today," he said. "I'm here to remind you. I'm here to see if you still flinch. And if you don't, I'll make you—" Hank felt his jaw tighten. "Remind me of what?" he asked. Rourke's smile widened just a little. "Of Tombstone," he said. "Of what you let happen. Of what you walked away from." Hank didn't move. The fire popped softly. Rourke glanced past Hank toward the direction of the ranch. "Nice little place you got," he said. "Quiet, clean, almost like you deserve it." Hank's hand tightened on the rifle stock. Not enough to raise it, just enough to keep himself steady. Rourke tilted his head. "And that girl," he added. "She's a fresh start, isn't she?" That was the moment Hank understood the real threat. Rourke wasn't hunting land. He was hunting leverage. Hank took a slow breath. "I'm not that man anymore," he said. Rourke laughed like that was the best joke he'd heard all year. "That's cute," he said, "but I am." For a long second, Hank could have ended it right there. One pull, one shot, one less ghost in the world. But Hank didn't lift the rifle. He didn't give Rourke the ending he came for. Instead, Hank stepped back from the fire. "You want to play games? Go find someone who still wants to," he said. "I'm going home." Rourke's smile faded for the first time. Just a flicker. "You walk away now," Rourke said. "And you think that makes you better?" Hank met his eyes, calm as a man who had finally learned what mattered. "It makes me free," he said. Then he turned and walked back to his horse. He expected a bullet. He expected a knife in the dark. Nothing came. Only the sound of Rourke's voice, floating after him like smoke. "This ain't over. Mercer." Hank rode